Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'm going to discuss something that popped up in the mail on Sunday about working with the EU to deal with Brexit red tape. Now I'd like to move on from the vaguely ridiculous notion of a hard Brexit paper that spends most of its time attacking the EU as pretty much the most evil thing to come out of Europe since Vlad the Impaler, calling for us to unite with Brussels, and take a look at the article and then finish off by summarising that although they are conscious of the damage that Brexit is causing, their panic to find a solution is casting around in waters that we know has nothing of value. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So the headline, first of all, let's unite with the EU to crush the curse of border bureaucracy. Unite with the EU? Wow. I mean, I know the Daily Mail was behind the campaign for us to join in the first place, but I didn't expect them to go back so quickly. But of course, they're not actually suggesting we rejoin. After all, they're only having a pop at the curse of border bureaucracy. Well, that's a start at least. We'll just rejoin the customs union and single market. I mean, that would get rid of the border bureaucracy. But yet again, this is not what they are explicitly calling for. It's just the only way to achieve what they want. But let's go through the meat of the article. So it starts off in the way you might expect an article in, say, The New European to begin. It's making a powerful case against Brexit. It starts to stutter a little when it cites Archie Norman, the chairman of Marks and Spencer. Now, bear in mind that Marks and Spencer have been screwed by Brexit largely because they struggle to ship their prepared food to their EU shops, very famously in Paris. I talked recently about how they were complaining that they didn't realise how Brexit would impact their business model. I mean, let's consider what that model is. So they need to ship prepared meals, including sandwiches, from Britain to France. So what we're talking about are goods which are subject to full SPS checks. That's sanitary and phytosanitary checks. So a right load of paperwork and regulations immediately there. And it makes that clear in the article. It's absolutely ridiculous the amount of paperwork involved. And that's not even as bad yet, because our regulations are still aligned. Once we diverge, it'll be even trickier, because it'll not just be a case of filling in the paperwork. You'll have to actually make sure that what you're producing is still fit for the EU market. Then part of their need is to ship lots of different types of these meals in the same trick. It's not like one particular type of sandwich in the lorry. There's lots of different types and lots of different types of meals, all in the same truck. This sort of thing has been made less popular because let's say you have 100 different types of product in your lorry, different consignments, and there's a customs issue with even one of them, the whole shipment is stopped because it's all on the same lorry until the issue is resolved. And if the issue isn't resolved, all 100 consignments go back. Don't just take the one that's wrong out, the whole thing. So basically, Marks and Spencer have a business model which gets hit from all sides by Brexit, at least in regard to their international business. We knew we were getting this for the entirety of 2020. And the executives in charge of the company say they had no idea. So although this article describes Mr. Norman as a former MP and therefore someone who combines experience in both Parliament and business, which is true, he hasn't demonstrated expertise in either. He was an MP for a few years, and his business acumen didn't run to researching how Brexit would affect his international business. I think we can readily dismiss any notions he has for identifying either problems or solutions with Brexit because he's already admitted to being clueless. For example, the article quotes Norman as saying that the border inspection arrangements have been set up to fail and are wholly at odds with the modern world. Well, this is a guy who didn't actually know what the border between Britain and France was going to look like after Brexit. He's an expert on borders around the world, is he? Is he? I don't think he is. There's two ways of looking at this. Firstly, you could note that the appeal of being in the single market is largely free trade with the rest of that market. As a result, by both design and accident, it will be the case that not being in the single market means a lot of trade friction. It's obvious. The less friction there is in trade with the single market from outside, the less of a benefit it is to be inside it. Let's not make no bones about this. Being inside the single market means you have to agree to a few things. There are obligations. No one likes obligations if you can get out of them. So what's the benefit of being in the market if you can trade just as easily outside the market? There isn't one. Stands to reason. And yet this supposed captain of industry is somehow trying to argue that it is against the EU's interest to have trade friction between itself and outsiders. I'm beginning to think I could run a huge multinational if this is the calibre of people who actually do. The second way to look at it is to say that this is not at odds with the modern world at all. Now, let's look at other countries bordering the EU that are not in the EU. In fact, better than that, there was actually a reasonable article on this in the BBC a few years ago, which I found. I'll link below. But bear in mind that all of the other non-EU countries have had their system set up and running well for years. They represent how the world really is. The shortest delay in this article was at the Swedish-Norwegian border, 20 minutes. Now that doesn't sound like a lot, but it is. We have thousands of lorries wanting to pass through Dover each day at like normal trade levels and only a few lanes leading up to it. We don't have the facilities to manage that. I'll talk more about that later, but that's what the lorry parks are for. But the thing is, it won't be 20 minutes for us, even when our systems are up and running, which they're not. See, Norway is not in the EU, but it is in the single market. Not in a customs union, but it is in the single market. That helps enormously. Whereas you say Turkey is the other way around. Now, Turkey is in a customs union, a weaker one than we had with the EU, which is better than nothing, but it's not in the single market. Now, the same article noted that it could take up to 24 hours or more to clear the border between Turkey and the EU. Now, we don't have any of that. We're not in the customs union. We're not in the single market. Now, ideally, what we'd try and do is find a country where there are, a country that's neither in the customs union nor the single market that borders the EU for a comparison. But that's really just us now. The point is that if the friction that we are experiencing at the border was at odds with the rest of the world, we'd not be seeing the same friction around the rest of the world. But we are doing, because the only thing different about our border is that we didn't bother to build the facilities, systems and staff to manage it before we created that trade friction. The article then went on to say that checks were nonsensical because our food standards have long been among the best in the world. Yeah, because we were in the EU, which is a powerful driver of standards. But it's those standards that meant that the likes of the Daily Mail wanted us to leave the EU. We don't like their standards. Can't have it both ways. But here's the thing. If the argument is that we will maintain those standards, there isn't a problem. The EU have already agreed that with regards to the Northern Ireland Protocol, 80% of the checks can just disappear overnight if we guarantee to keep our standards in line. All we have to do is promise to maintain standards that are among the best in the world. And the EU have agreed, we don't need those checks. Don't need them. Most of them anyway, 80% of them. But the implication of the article is that we need to persuade the EU to adopt this position. No, we don't. They've already done so. It's the British government that are refusing. And it's at this point that you also realise what they meant by their headline. When the Mail was saying we should unite with the EU, what they really meant was that the EU should do exactly as we tell them, which is more like the sort of thing I expect from this paper. And as it rambled on, it suggested that these systems, which are a result of third country rules that have been in place for decades, these are not new rules, they're not rules that don't apply elsewhere, these are the rules for third countries, and they've been in place for decades. They tried to suggest that these rules are the fault of Michel Barnier, and that we could solve the whole thing with technology. Ah, yes, the old modern technology crap that even the government have stopped banging on about. Of course they've stopped banging on about it, because if they carried on, if such a system existed, why wouldn't Boris Johnson have already installed it? I mean, going back to that Norwegian-Swedish border, that is well known for being very high-tech, one of the most high-tech borders in the world. They're both in the single market, but it still takes 20 minutes to get a truck through, because Norway isn't in the customs union. That's what technology will do for you. If we join the single market but not the customs union, we can get through with just a 20-minute delay as well. Now, with the current facilities at Dover, and if you tried to get the same number of lorries through Dover as we used to, that was calculated as meaning a queue of 70,000 lorries. Because here's the thing about that border between Norway and Sweden. It's not as busy as Dover. Bear in mind that only 1% of lorries passing through Dover needed checking before this year. Obviously, we can't have that many lorries stuck waiting for processing. The calculation was that it would take 20 days. We'd have 20-day delays. Can't have a lorry stuck for 20 days, you know. And I'll link the article that talked about these numbers below as well. But there we have it. The headline was eye-opening, shared widely by people going, oh, the Daily Mail's calling us to rejoin. Sounded very much like a call to rejoin. Ended up being a typical whine about the EU being mean and the pursuit of fantasy solutions. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.